The first time my parents walked into my office, they didn't recognize me. To be fair, they weren't looking at me. They were looking at the glass walls, the city skyline, the receptionist's desk, the company logo mounted behind it, the polished floors. The employees walking through the building carrying laptops and coffee cups. They were too busy staring at everything I had built to notice the woman standing 10 feet away. The woman they once threw out of their house. The woman they told wasn't important enough to have her own room. My mother was holding a resume. My father was wearing the same nervous smile he used whenever he needed something from someone. 3 years earlier, they had stood in our family home and told me I had to leave. Not because I had done drugs, not because I had committed a crime, not because I had dropped out of school. No, I was kicked out because the neighbor's daughter needed my room. At least, that's what they told me. Back then, I was 19. Now I was 22. And neither of them knew they were about to interview with the company owned by the daughter they had replaced. I stood behind the glass wall of my office watching them fill out paperwork, watching them smile politely at my receptionist, watching them act like victims of bad luck. The same people who had looked me in the eye and told me, family makes sacrifices. Funny how they never meant themselves. Only me. My assistant stepped into my office. The candidates for operations manager are here. I looked through the glass again. My mother adjusted her jacket. My father checked his resume for the 3rd time. They looked worried, desperate, older than I remembered. For a second, a small part of me felt sorry for them. Then I remembered sleeping in my car. I remembered crying in a supermarket bathroom because I couldn't afford dinner. I remembered watching someone else sleep in my bed while my parents called it the right thing to do, and the sympathy disappeared. Send them in, I said. My assistant smiled. Both of them? I nodded. Yes. Then I looked at the 2 people who had chosen a stranger over their own daughter. Neither of them had any idea what was about to happen. And neither of them was prepared for the truth. Because the neighbor's daughter wasn't the only person whose life changed 3 years ago. Mine did too. Growing up, I always believed that if I worked hard enough, my parents would eventually choose me. I know how pathetic that sounds now, but when you're a child, you don't question love. You chase it. You earn it. You wait for it. My name is Emily Carter. I was an only child, at least technically, because for most of my childhood, it felt like my parents were raising someone else. The someone else was Lily Harper, the girl who lived next door. Lily was 2 years younger than me. Blonde hair, blue eyes, perfect smile. The kind of girl adults described as an angel. My mother adored her. My father treated her like she could do no wrong. Every Christmas, there was a gift for Lily under our tree. Every birthday, my mother baked her favorite cake. Every achievement Lily made was celebrated like a national holiday. I told myself it didn't matter, because unlike Lily, I had goals. I wanted to build something. I wanted to own a business one day. I wanted to prove that hard work mattered more than popularity. At 15, I got my first part-time job. At 16, I was saving money. At 17, I was taking online business courses. At 18, I was working weekends while my friends were going to parties. I wasn't trying to become rich. I was trying to become independent. Because deep down, I already knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong. Looking back now, the warning signs were everywhere. But when the people hurting you are the same people who raised you, it takes a long time to admit the truth. And the truth finally arrived the summer I turned 19. The summer, Lily's parents got divorced. The summer everything changed. The summer my parents decided that I mattered less than the girl next door. And what happened next destroyed the last illusion I had about my family. Lily's parents divorced in June. Within a week, my mother was talking about her constantly. Poor thing. Can you imagine how hard this must be for her? She's been through so much. At first, I agreed. I felt bad for Lily. Who wouldn't? Her family was falling apart. But then I noticed something strange. Every conversation in our house somehow became about Lily. Not me. Not our family. Lily. One night I came home from work and found my mother measuring my bedroom. I stood in the doorway. "What are you doing?" She jumped slightly. "Oh, nothing." She wasn't good at lying. "Why are you measuring my room?" She exchanged a look with my father. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. My stomach tightened. My father cleared his throat. "Sit down, Emily." Nobody wants to hear those words from their parents. Not when they're spoken in that tone. I sat. My mother immediately started crying. That should have been my warning. Whenever my mother cried before telling the truth, it usually meant she wanted forgiveness before asking for it. My father folded his arms. "Lily needs help." I stared at him. "What kind of help?" My mother wiped her eyes. "Her mother is struggling financially." I nodded. "Okay." My father continued. "They may need somewhere for Lily to stay." I still didn't understand. "That's nice." Then my mother said the sentence that changed everything. "We were thinking she could stay here." I blinked. "Where?" My mother looked away. "In your room." For a moment, I genuinely thought she was joking. Nobody laughed. Nobody smiled. Nobody said, "Just kidding." My heart began pounding. "What do you mean, my room?" My father spoke like he had already made the decision. "Lily needs stability right now." "And?" My mother reached for my hand. I pulled away. "We thought maybe you could stay somewhere else." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. "Somewhere else?" My father nodded. "You have friends." My mother added, "You're 19 now." I stared at both of them, waiting. Waiting for the punchline. Waiting for reality to return. It never did. "You want me to move out?" My father sighed. "Don't make it sound dramatic." Dramatic. I was being removed from my own home, and somehow I was the dramatic one. I stood up. "No." My father's expression hardened. "What?" "No." For the first time in years, I refused. "This is my room." My mother started crying again. "Emily, please." "No." My father slammed his hand against the table. "Lily needs us." I looked directly at him. "What about me?" Silence. The answer was silence. And that hurt more than anything. Not because they chose Lily, because they didn't even hesitate. I wasn't competing with a stranger. I had already lost. My father stood. "You have 2 weeks." I stared at him. "What?" "2 weeks to figure something out." My mother whispered, "We'll help you pack." Help me pack. The words hit harder than a slap. They weren't asking. They weren't discussing. They were evicting me, their daughter, to make room for the neighbor's child. I wish I could tell you that was the worst part, but I was wrong. The worst part came after Lily moved in. 2 weeks later, I carried the last box to my car. Everything I owned fit into. 3 boxes. 1 suitcase. A backpack. 19 years of life reduced to a few containers. My mother hugged Lily while I loaded my belongings. My father carried Lily's furniture into the room that used to be mine. Nobody offered to help me. Nobody asked where I was going. Nobody asked if I was scared. I was. Terrified. But apparently that wasn't important. Lily stood in the driveway watching. "You'll be okay," she said. I looked at her. The girl standing in front of me was wearing my mother's favorite sweater. The sweater my mother had refused to lend me 2 years earlier because it was special. Now Lily was wearing it, and smiling. Your parents are just trying to do the right thing. Something inside me snapped. "The right thing?" She shrugged. "I need the room more than you do." The confidence in her voice shocked me. Not guilt, not embarrassment, entitlement. As if my life had always belonged to her. I got into my car and drove away before I said something I couldn't take back. For the first month, I slept on my friend Jessica's couch. I told everyone I was temporarily staying there. I was too embarrassed to tell the truth. Because who gets kicked out for the neighbor's daughter? Nobody would believe it. Meanwhile, things got worse. Much worse. Every time I visited home to collect mail, something else had disappeared. My desk, my bookshelves, my posters, family photos, even the picture of me and Grandma at my high school graduation. Gone. Replaced. One afternoon, I walked into what used to be my bedroom. I almost didn't recognize it. The walls had been repainted. New curtains, new furniture, new photos. There was not a single sign I had ever lived there. Not one. Lily was sitting on the bed, scrolling through her phone. My bed. She barely looked up. Can I help you? Can I help you? Like I was the visitor. Like I didn't spend 12 years in that room. I looked around. Then I noticed something on the dresser. A framed photo. My parents. Lily. All smiling. Family vacation. The beach. Matching shirts. The trip they told me they couldn't afford. The trip they took 3 months after I moved out. With Lily, not me. I felt physically sick. That night I confronted my parents. You took Lily on vacation? My mother looked uncomfortable. It was a last-minute thing. My father added. She needed cheering up. I stared at him. And I didn't? My father rolled his eyes. Why are you still obsessed with this? Obsessed. 3 months earlier, I had a home. Now I was sleeping on someone else's couch. And somehow I was obsessed. Looking back, that was the moment I stopped seeing them as parents. Not completely, but something cracked. Something fundamental. Because parents are supposed to protect you. Mine were protecting the person who replaced me. And I still didn't know how much that decision was going to cost them. Because while Lily was settling into my life, I was beginning to build a new one. And none of us could have imagined where that road was leading. The first winter after I left home was the hardest. Not because of the cold, because of the loneliness. People always talk about being abandoned as if it happens in one dramatic moment. It doesn't. Not usually. Real abandonment happens 100 times afterward. Every holiday invitation that never comes. Every family photo you're no longer in. Every birthday message that gets shorter and shorter until it disappears completely. That first Christmas, I spent the day working a double shift at a coffee shop. I volunteered for it. Everyone else wanted to be with their families. I didn't have one anymore. Around noon, my manager handed me a small gift bag. From the staff. Inside was a $20 gift card and a handwritten card signed by everyone. Nothing expensive. Nothing life-changing. But I had to lock myself in the bathroom for 10 minutes because it was the first gift I had received all year. The people I worked with cared more about me than the people who raised me. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. Because for the first time, I stopped waiting for my parents to become different people. I stopped hoping. I stopped calling. I stopped trying. Instead, I focused on myself. At community college, I threw myself into every business class I could find. Marketing, finance, operations, sales, anything that could help me build the future I wanted. One professor changed everything. Professor Daniel Ross. He taught entrepreneurship. The first day of class, he wrote something on the whiteboard. Your past explains you. It does not own you. I stared at those words for the entire lecture. After class, he stopped me. You look like someone carrying a heavy backpack. I laughed. You have no idea. Over the next year, he became a mentor. Not a father figure. Something better. Someone who believed in me without expecting anything in return. When I told him my dream was to start a staffing and recruitment company, he didn't laugh. Most people did. I was 20 years old. Broke. Living in a rented room. Working 2 jobs. The dream sounded ridiculous. Professor Ross simply said, "Good." I blinked. "Good?" He smiled. Small dreams create small lives. That sentence followed me everywhere. So I started. Slowly, painfully. After classes, I worked at a small recruiting agency entering data. It wasn't glamorous. Most days I spent hours calling candidates who never answered. But I learned. Every mistake, every contract, every client meeting, every rejection, I learned. For 2 years, my life became a cycle. Wake up, work, study, sleep, repeat. No vacations, no weekends, no excuses. While other people were posting beach photos online, I was eating instant noodles at midnight while finishing business plans. Sometimes I wondered if it would ever pay off. Sometimes I sat alone in my tiny apartment and questioned everything. Then I would remember my old bedroom, Lily sleeping in my bed, my parents smiling beside her, and suddenly quitting wasn't an option anymore. Failure would mean they were right, and I couldn't allow that. At 21, I launched my own recruiting agency. The first month, I made almost no money. The second month wasn't much better. The third month, I lost my biggest client. I remember sitting in my office, which was really just a shared workspace, and staring at my bank account. I had enough money for maybe 6 more weeks. 7 if I stopped eating anything besides ramen. That night, I almost gave up. Almost. Then, something happened. A small manufacturing company hired me to fill 3 positions. I filled all 3. Then they referred another company. Then another. Then another. Momentum. For the first time in years, things started moving in my direction. By 22, I had 4 employees. By 23, I had 12. By 22 and a half, I was making more money than both of my parents combined. But the best part wasn't the money. The best part was waking up every morning knowing nobody could take my future away again. I built it myself, brick by brick, day by day. And while my life was finally moving upward, someone else's was beginning to collapse. At first, I didn't know. Then one phone call changed everything. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. Hello? A voice I hadn't heard in nearly a year responded. Emily? My stomach tightened. My mother. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said something strange. How have you been? I nearly laughed. 3 years. 3 years without asking. And now she wanted to know? I'm fine. A pause. Then, we've had some difficulties. Of course, people rarely call when life is going well. I listened. Apparently, my father's company had downsized. He lost his management position. The mortgage payments became difficult. Medical bills followed. Savings disappeared. Debt grew. The familiar story, the kind that happens every day. What surprised me was what came next. And Lily? I asked. The silence told me everything. What about Lily? My mother's voice became smaller. She moved away. I frowned. Moved away? About a year ago. Does she help? Long pause. No? Interesting. The girl who was supposedly family. The girl worth sacrificing a daughter for. Gone. Just gone. My mother quickly changed the subject. We were hoping we could talk sometime. I said I'd think about it, then hung up. Something felt off. 3 days later, my assistant walked into my office holding a stack of applications. We're hiring another operations manager, right? I nodded. She handed me the folder. These are the finalists. I opened the file. The first resume belonged to my father. The second belonged to my mother. I stared at the names. Once, twice, 3 times. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because life had somehow written a better ending than I ever could. The people who threw me out to make room for someone else were applying for jobs at my company. They had no idea. The applications came through a recruiting site. My company name was hidden during the early screening process. Neither of them knew who owned the business. Neither of them knew who would conduct the final interview. Neither of them knew the daughter they had discarded was now sitting in the corner office. And that wasn't even the biggest surprise. As I continued reading the applications, I found something else. Both resumes listed the same reference. Lily Harper. I stared at the screen, then opened LinkedIn. What I discovered shocked even me. Lily had worked at my father's company. Lily had convinced him to recommend her. Lily had helped secure contracts. Then Lily left, taking several major clients with her. The company lost revenue. Layoffs followed. My father's position disappeared. The same person they sacrificed me for had indirectly helped destroy the career they sacrificed me to protect. I leaned back in my chair. For a long moment, I just sat there, thinking, because suddenly I understood something. Life had already punished them. I didn't need revenge. I only needed to decide what happened next. And the next morning, my parents walked into my office for their interview. Neither of them recognized me at first. The interview was scheduled for 10 o'clock. At 9:57, I watched my parents sitting in the waiting area through the glass wall of my office. 3 years. 3 years since I had last seen them in person. My father looked older. His hair had gone almost completely gray. My mother looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of tired that comes from realizing certain mistakes cannot be undone. For a moment, I wondered if they recognized the company name, if they had somehow connected the dots. Then I remembered they never really paid attention to my career. Not enough to know what I was building. Not enough to know who I had become. My assistant knocked on the door. "They're ready." I nodded. "Send them in." The door opened. My parents walked inside. At first, neither of them looked directly at me. They were focused on being professional, nervous candidates trying to impress an employer. Then my mother looked up. The color drained from her face immediately. My father froze mid-step. The silence was almost painful. "Emily?" my mother whispered. I smiled politely. "Good morning." My father looked around the office, then back at me, then at the company logo behind my desk, then back at me again. He finally understood. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't some manager conducting interviews. This was my company, my office, my success, my life, the life they never bothered to ask about. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Finally, I gestured toward the chairs. "Please sit." Neither moved. My mother looked close to tears. My father looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. Eventually, they sat down. I opened the file in front of me, the same way I would for any other candidate. "Let's begin." My father swallowed hard. "Emily." I raised a hand. "Today, I'm conducting an interview." The room became silent again. I reviewed their experience, asked questions, took notes, completely professional. And the entire time, both of them looked increasingly uncomfortable. Not because I was rude, because I wasn't. I was calm, respectful, objective, and somehow that made it worse. Because anger would have been easier. Anger would have meant I still needed something from them, but I didn't. About halfway through the interview, my mother couldn't take it anymore. Tears filled her eyes. "We're sorry." I stopped writing. The words hung in the air. "We're sorry." 3 years late. 3 years after I lost my home. 3 years after sleeping on couches. 3 years after rebuilding my life from nothing. My father stared at the floor. "We made a mistake." I looked at him. "No." His head lifted. I continued. "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday." Silence. "A mistake is taking a wrong turn." My voice remained calm. "What you did was a choice." Neither of them responded. Because they knew I was right. My mother started crying. "We thought we were helping, Lily." I laughed softly. The sound surprised even me. Not because it was funny, because after all this time, that was still their excuse. Helping Lily. Always helping Lily. Never helping me. I leaned back in my chair. Do you know what the hardest part was? Neither answered. It wasn't losing my room. My mother looked up. It wasn't leaving home. My father slowly met my eyes. It wasn't sleeping on couches. I paused. It was realizing that the people who were supposed to choose me never did. My mother broke down completely. My father closed his eyes. For the first time in my life, neither of them had an argument. No excuses. No explanations. No speeches about sacrifice. Just silence. The kind of silence that only arrives when the truth finally wins. Then my father asked a question. One simple question. "Did you hate us?" I thought about it. Honestly, for a long moment. Then I shook my head. No. His eyes widened slightly. I was disappointed. I looked at both of them. And eventually, I stopped expecting anything. That seemed to hurt more than hatred ever could. Because hatred still implies attachment. I had simply moved on. And that was something they couldn't fix. A lot of people expect this story to end with revenge. They expect me to say I threw their resumes in the trash, or had security escort them out, or humiliated them in front of everyone. But life isn't always that simple, and neither am I. The truth is, by the time they sat across from me in that office, I had already won. Not because I owned a company, not because I had money, Not because they needed something from me. I had won because their choices no longer controlled my life. That was the real victory, not revenge. Freedom. After the interview, I walked them to the elevator, the same way I would any other candidate. Before the doors closed, my mother looked at me. I wish we could do it over. I believed her. For the first time in years, I genuinely believed her. But some doors only open one way, and some decisions leave permanent marks. The elevator doors began to close. Then my father spoke. Emily. I looked up. His eyes were filled with regret, the kind that arrives too late. You deserved better. The doors closed. And for a moment, I just stood there, quiet, thinking, because that was all I had ever wanted. Not money, not revenge, not an apology, just the truth. 3 simple words. You deserved better. Then I turned around and walked back to my office, back to the life I built, back to the future nobody could take from me. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely at peace. If this story touched you, let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were Emily? Would you have given your parents another chance? Or would you have walked away forever? Sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers. They come from the people who were supposed to love us most. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't getting even. It's building a life so strong that the people who doubted you can no longer ignore what you've become. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, replaced, or treated like your dreams mattered less than someone else's, remember this. Your value is not determined by who failed to see it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Every week we bring you powerful stories about family betrayal, hidden truths, painful choices, and the moments when life finally turns the tables. And who knows, the next story might be the one you never forget. Until next time, take care of yourself, and never let someone else's choices decide your future.